Hello. Hello. You have to mute it, unmute it. I can't hear you speak. Unmute.
There you go.
We got you. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you doing this evening?
I am good. We have a few more joining us, so we're going to get everyone, we're going to allow them access first. Unmute. There we go. How are
Am
you?
I in?
Hello.
Hi.
I am Opus Knight.
Nice to meet you.
Good evening. How is everyone tonight?
Doing pretty
Good.
well.
Cool.
Good.
This is Night Vision, and I want everyone to just, we're going to have a free form where everyone can express and answer questions and engage all together, okay?
Awesome.
Okay. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with Madison, please. And can you give us a little rundown on your book and possibly share the cover if you can?
Hi. Yes.
Not you.
My camera is a little small, so I'm trying to bear with me. If
No,
it
you're fine.
Here's my first novel, Releasing Her Power Within.
Beautiful.
It is about main character Liz. She is working as a physical therapist assistant, and she finally gets a free weekend to go home and deal with her family's cabin. Her mother passed away from cancer. And while they're at the cabin, she's offered an opportunity to move and start a whole new life, new job, kind of a slower paced life where she's not overworked. So she takes that opportunity, moves, and when she gets into town, things start happening. They don't add up. She finds out there's a family secret and there's more going on than what she expected. And then someone starts trying to kill her. And she kind of enters into a crazy world expecting to have a new calm life. But then magic happens and she becomes something she didn't think she was. So without giving too much away, she like basically turns into this creature that she thought was non-existent, was in fairy tales. So
amazing. I love it. Okay, now is it Brandon? Brand.
Yeah.
How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm 40 years old, a fantasy author. This is my book, if you can even see it.
There we go.
Rise of Tears. My first novel I've been trying to write for quite a few years, but just finally got it out and finally got this one going.
Okay. And did you find that this is your first time writing?
Well, so I've been writing books or trying to write books for quite a while. Basically, most of my life, I've wanted to be a writer. Robert Jordan's death kind of kicked me in the butt and made me kind of worried that I wouldn't be able to finish my story before, I ended.
Mm-hmm.
Then I basically was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Goodness.
And went through a year of chemo. And during that whole year of chemo, I basically sat here and continually thought, my stories, and I'm not going to tell my stories. So once I finally recovered, I sat down and within a year's time, I wrote down Rise of Tears and Fall of Tears, which are the first 2 novels.
Amazing. That's beautiful. I love it. Okay. And S.L. Herbie?
That's me.
How are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. This is it's my first book, Shadows of a Dream.
Okay.
I just got it published a couple weeks ago, and it follows the life of a gamer who has some tragedy befall him, and he discovers a world beyond his perceptions, where he needs to solve solve the murders of some of his friends before he ends up joining them in death. It's I don't want to give too much away, but it's very much like Brand. I've been been writing for most of my life, and really this is my first book, and I hope folks like it.
Wonderful. Now we had James join us.
Hi. Yeah,
How
sorry.
are you?
I'm good. I had some technical difficulties.
You're perfectly fine. I just wanted to let you know this is an open forum, so speak freely, and everyone
Okay.
we can engage together. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Did you want to tell us a little bit about your book and show us the cover if possible?
Yeah, hold on. Let me grab it off the shelf. All right. Here is my book. It's Diamond Stained. It's the first book of the Jewels of Illumination series. We're relaunching on Amazon right now. We just started yesterday, actually, with a publisher, so hopefully it'll do better than on my own. But Diamond Stained is set in kind of a world that uses sort of jewels as technology. So it's like a magic-based technology system. It's about Industrial Revolution level of technology. And in it, we have two characters, Oben and Avina, and they are both people haunted by the mistakes in their past. Oben, when we start the story, is at his sort of rock bottom. He used to be like a palace guard and was really well respected, but then he murdered someone, and the guilt of that has destroyed him. And now he's a bandit on the other side of the world. He doesn't care about anything. And the only person in his bandit group that kind of, has ever tried to reach out to him is about to be fatally wounded. And that's going to snap Oben kind of out of his depression. And then that brings us to Avina, who is our other character. And she's a sort of a healer apprentice to this sort of scholar guy. And she is attacked by the bandits, by Oben's group. And when Oben's friend is hurt, she decides to heal him because that's what she does. So Oben and Vina kind of meet trying to save the life of this dying guy. And this is where Oben's sort of redemption story begins as he tries to find sort of a new place, in the world, one where he isn't causing pain, but, trying to, make up for his mistakes.
Very interesting. I love it.
And so he ends up being the bodyguard to the scholar that he attacked and trying to protect him from a crime syndicate, a necromancer, and riots. There's all sorts of crazy stuff in this book.
Okay. And we know that we have 2, or is it 3 that are first timers, or is everyone?
I'm first time.
I'm definitely a first timer. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a first timer as well.
Madison?
I actually published this last year, but I guess I technically am kind of still a first timer.
Wonderful. So I'm actually the veteran here.
Well, okay, no. I'm not
I'm sorry.
first time publishing. I've actually published a couple. I thought this was
Yeah.
first time with you here on a
Yeah,
podcast.
that's what I thought, Matthew. This
Okay.
this is my 6th novel I've published here, and so
This is my debut novel, so
Oh, cool.
I'm certainly a first timer.
Congratulations.
Lovely.
Thank
Now,
you,
in
thank you.
writing your novels, how long from start to finish did it take you? And who wants to start?
It takes me about a month to write a 90,000, 100,000 word novel. That's the rough draft. And then another 3 weeks probably on editing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Madison?
Mine takes about maybe 3 to 4 months if my toddler lets me sit down and write.
So you're a fifth writer.
Yeah.
Mom's got to
He-
make it quick.
Yes. And he actually started daycare, they have a program for him 2 weeks ago. So my schedule's kind of changing, which is giving me more time to write, which I love right now.
Brand?
Well, after I recovered from the cancer, like I said, I sat down and I wrote. Actually, it was initially intended as Tears of Hatsune. It's the series now, but it was going to be the book. When I sat down and wrote it in 8 months, I wrote the first book, but it was 475,000 words. So after sitting down with some people, I decided to split it into 2 books, and then after that, it was slowly a build up towards that. So about 8 months to write it, and then on and off for the next year preparing it for everything.
Okay, great. SL,
Wow. It took me 4 years to write Shadows of a Dream. From start to finish, it's 120,000 words. I hope to write the sequel in about 6 months, but
well,
I'd love to be on James's schedule.
Well, I mean, my first novel took me like 2 or 3 years to finally finish and polish and all that. That's that was my sixth novel, and I'm kind of figuring it out now where I kind of have a system in place.
It's a daunting task writing a book from the get-go where you've never finished it. You don't know if you're going to get to the end, the words, everything going through. When you finally finish the first one, I don't know, I think it becomes not easy, never is easy, but I think it becomes a little bit easier because you realize the quest is completable. You can get to the end of it.
I agree.
now how many started initially writing a book and life kind of happened and then went back to it, and or was it something that you just sat down and boom, let's get this done?
Yeah, no, that definitely happened for me. I had a lot happen. This was my 4th or 5th book idea, and I finally finished it. And it's like, you know what? We're just going to go for it. So, yeah.
Now, I'm assuming, is everyone self-published?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I'm
Everyone
going with a hybrid publisher right now. I just started out with, but I was
Now,
previously self-published.
Has anyone ever considered going traditional, or was that a decision that you kind of came to immediately or very quickly?
It was just such a soul-crushing process. Like,
Agreed.
the
It is.
query process is just terrible.
Yeah.
I waited
queried
for
my
a
first
year.
novel.
So
Yeah.
In my
we
dreams.
actually attempted to send out multiple, your manuscript to multiple publishing houses.
Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah. I did the agent's crawl for like 2 years.
Yeah, I
All
hustled with agents left, right, and sideways, and it was just such a crushing process because they never get to really see your book, right? Like, so they judge it purely on your query. And I don't know how successful I am at writing a query, right? Like, I thought it was pretty decent, but obviously, like, you can't really dig into the minutia of the book, which makes it stand out from everything around it.
Now, do you, what characters throughout history, who were your influences?
Robert Jordan.
Start.
Robert Jordan for me was a big influence on my writing style, and I'd say R. Scott Bakker on sort of subject matter and sort of three-dimensional characters, and writing the more darker aspects of people. We all have that sort of negative side to us, our defects and stuff, and he's really good at capturing that sort of grimy part of humanity.
So is everyone writes fiction, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you thought of doing exploring any other genres?
I have
A
an
little
idea.
bit.
Sorry, go ahead.
You're good. I got somebody reached out to me to collaborate with a nonfiction like self-care thing recently, and I sent in a piece. I don't know if they're going to accept it or not, but that, I guess, is kind of venturing into the nonfiction realm. I don't know if I want to actually do a lot there though, because I love fantasy and romance and paranormal stuff. That's what I do, but I guess, yeah.
Now, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I have a plan for a horror series once Well of Shadows is done with. I may start working on that, or it may end up in the pile with all the other things that I started to write that never really sort of panned out.
Now, gentlemen, I have a question. Yes, I'm gonna let you answer too. I am sorry. It just came to mind. Do you find when you write female characters, do you have to draw from other females? Like, do you have to ask them questions to, like, for some frame of reference, or does it kind of come easy?
Curiosity
thing with me.
I'm sort of 50-50. One of the breakout characters in Shadows of the Dream is a woman by the name of Aristoy, who is, I don't want to call her a secondary character because she, she's fairly important, but she's definitely not the main character or the main protagonist. And I wrote her, certainly as just a character, right? Like, I believe, characters shouldn't be defined specifically by their gender or their sexual orientation or whatever. But I do believe in dealing with characters in a respectful manner. So I did check with my wife and some other folks of the female persuasion to make sure that I was hitting the points, because I never want to write a stereotype. I never want to write something that that's disrespectful. In the sequel, I hope to include a non-binary character. So I reached out to GLAAD, and I have some folks that I've made some connections with on social media that I'm bouncing some ideas off of, because especially with something like that, I don't want to put something out where my character is a parody or even seen as a parody, right? Like I want any reader to be able to read my book and find a character that they can sort of picture themselves as, or at least see the world through. So if that answered your question, it was sort of a roundabout way.
Yes, no, perfect. Now, Brand, you have 2 questions. You want to answer the first one?
Okay, well, the first one I was saying about the different genres, the only thing I've done, or the closest I've gotten to different genres, is I do kind of a dark, spooky paranormal, only because for Halloween, I do a huge yard haunt setup, where I basically transform my whole entire yard over for Halloween into Ravenfell Manor. Basically all DIY hand-built stuff, and somebody basically said the best haunts have stories. So me being a writer, I basically took on and created a backstory, and then which led into me publishing several short stories and novellas of a series that basically tells the whole origin of the story I do, which is kind of a dark fantasy paranormal series.
Nice.
As for the gender question, as a gay man, I've been kind of closer with women throughout my life and had more of an inner look with women. I won't say I know their perspective as much. I've been more in depth with them than, say, other people. So I think I draw from that a little bit. My best friends were always women who sat down and talked about their most intimate details with me and stuff. So I hope I'm getting it at least close to true to form when I write my female characters.
Now, do you fear or have any kind of apprehension as far as, okay, this is a touchy subject, or maybe I shouldn't, write this because certain people's sensibilities might be hurt? Or do you feel that this story needs to be told and I'm going to do it as authentic as I can?
I will put anything into my books I will put anything into my books if I feel it's necessary for the story. Not to be what is the word? Not to be like shocking or gratuitous, or to what am I? I'm like, like the Grindhouse stuff where they were exploitative is the word I'm looking for. But that there are just terrible things that happen to people, and sometimes they might happen to my characters, and then how they deal with it, how they can maybe find their own power back. Like I have a main character that had an attempted rape, and she managed to get to get the upper hand in it, but it still left her really traumatized because it was someone she trusted. And so a lot of it was her grappling over that it wasn't her fault, even though she kind of was blaming herself for it, which is, I think, something that happens to people, and it's a really tragic thing when you blame yourself for something that wasn't your fault and you shouldn't at all feel guilty for it. But sometimes our psychology is messed up, and I mean, I didn't even intend to write it. It happened, like the scene just sort of came on me as like they were doing a breakup, and then I kind of understood this character a lot better, and he kind of came off as that sort of nice guy, who he thought he had earned her by doing all this stuff for her, and now that she's really rejecting him forcefully, it just spun out of control in the writing. It was one of the few times I've really lost control of my plot and just had my characters doing things that I didn't anticipate. But
Gotcha. Yeah, my characters, they pretty much go their own way, and I hold on for the ride. And
Yeah.
I love that thought of, you know, you can only write from your perspective. Unless you are, you know, bringing in other, like a collaborative kind of effort and during doing research and things like that. But, you know, in essence, the book is yours. The story is yours. And the reason I asked that question is I know with the way the world has kind of went through so much turmoil in recent years, that a lot of people are scared to kind of touch on certain subjects and the political correctness kind of thing. And I'm just curious as far as, and I've been asked by readers to ask some form of this question, and I kind of put it all together as far as this is how I see it, as how do you interpret what you think your readers will want to hear? Or do you feel, look, I'm telling the story and this, you know, if you have a problem with it, or because there's always going to be some backlash somewhere. Whether it's a bad review.
No one's ever
How
going to
do you
like,
deal with that? Yeah, you're never
no
going to
one's,
make everyone happy. It's just not possible.
I want to tell an authentic and true story that
Mhm.
comes from my heart and hope that people like it. And that if I do touch on some unsavory aspect, at least I'm trying to touch on it from a point of view of ultimately all my characters are there to overcome their problems and, you know, get out onto the other side into the sunlight, right? Even if they have to go into the dark. So that's how I tell stories.
I think if you deal with it, or you do your best to deal with it respectfully,
Mhm.
you know, and not, I'm not one for really shock value, as James said, you know, however, bad things happen, right?
Yep.
Like, and if those bad things move the story forward and they're done in that spirit, I think it's fine. Like, as you guys said, no one is going to write a story that everyone is going to love, right? There's always, you know, people like different things. They like different writing styles. They're shocked by, you know, by things that other people take in stride. Like, all you can do is try to tell your story the best you possibly can and hope that there are people out there that appreciate it, so you can keep writing.
Madison?
Hmm?
Madison?
What? Yeah, I'm just agreeing. I'm listening. Sorry.
I see her head shaking and bouncing, and I'm like, yeah. Just wanted to make sure we're here. Brand,
Yes.
what were you gonna say?
At what point? I don't know now.
It may have picked up on the noise. Like, I know mine, like, my headphones bob and make noise.
Like, I know I did. I had written a story that is probably, there are some people that would probably not like it, and it's one of abuse. But growing up, and there's a lot of people who will say you can only write what you know. Now, while I'm a man who wasn't abused in that way, I grew up surrounded by abuse, to the point where, I mean, a lot of my childhood was spent being the young kid sitting at the side during therapy while everybody else dealt with their trauma and their abuse. And so while I didn't live through it physically, I lived through it and went through a lot of that. But I also sat back and watched the stories of numerous people who dealt with horrific abuse. And on top of that, how each different person came out the other side, and some of them didn't. And actually, when I wrote this story, I didn't even realize that I had based it around this person who went through horrible abuse, but kind of clung to it throughout their life and wouldn't let it go and let it kind of destroy them. And I didn't realize until I got to the end of the book that it was a storytelling of how she eventually got through and dealt with it and finally was able to let it go in a way that this one person was not able to let it go. And I still haven't released it. I've had other people read it just because I have those tensions where I'm like, is this going to be too much? Now I have my 87-year-old neighbor who read it. She's fine with it. So I'm hoping that's a little bit of a, but yeah, I mean, it was when I got through it, it's a powerful piece for me, but I still haven't released it yet because it's kind of, I think because of that power, I've kind of held on to it for a little bit longer.
You see, in my case, I write dark literature. So my writing is extremely dark.
This is the darkest I've ever written.
To a point of where, you know, there's a lot of murder, mayhem, and all different kinds of, from incest to rape to you name it. Because, you know, we walk through life and there's a lot of times and people that you encounter that they don't have a voice. And I feel as an author, we are a lot of people's voices, you know, and when someone picks up a book regarding something that you've written, you not only want them hopefully to learn something new or some light bulb moment in their mind to come on, maybe to gain something from what you've written, you know, whether it's hope, whether it's how to go on, and even if it's to seek help, and they might not have recognized beforehand that this is a situation that you need help, because a lot of people won't ask, you know. Now, what author, if you had to in the future, if somebody characterized your writing, who would they say your writing is most like? Or would you want to be not so much, because that seems to be the thing a lot on Facebook, on Twitter now, that it's Poe-like or, you know, Browning-like or whatnot. Do any of you have any of that kind of reflective thing going on where you were like, well, yeah, this does have a little flavor here of Browning or something like that?
I would hope that mine is kind of similar to Sarah J. Maas or like Ivy Asher. Those are two of my favorite authors. And I feel like sometimes little bits and pieces of like what I find in their characters comes out of my characters. They have very strong female characters that are going to save the day kind of thing. And I really like how they do that. And then they also bring in a little bit of like spice with the romance stuff and like foul language and stuff like that. They just kind of, I kind of want to interpret that, put it in my novels if I can. And I feel like it shows through sometimes. I don't know if anybody were to compare me to that, I would be overly the top ecstatic. So
I have been actually compared to Brandon Sanderson, but that's not surprising because we're both influenced by Robert Jordan and we both write like how Robert Jordan wrote. So that's really not surprising. It's not like I'm trying to emulate Brandon Sanderson. I'm more trying to emulate Robert Jordan, but yes, so is he to an extent, although he's different, of course. But
okay, Fran.
So I would say I would want to be kind of emulate a little bit Robert Jordan, just in not even the writing style, but I loved the in-depth filters that he built into his world. The fact that reading through his, sorry, watching your cat.
That's okay. This is Orpheus back here.
I have some skeletons hanging around my house too. Actually, not in view, but
I see him.
But while I would like Robert Jordan, I actually was just compared. Somebody was going through my work and told me that even though I haven't read her work, my work reminds them a lot of Robin Hobb. So now I have to pick up some of her books and kind of figure out where they're basing it off of. Yeah, probably Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan. Those were some of my biggest inspirations.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
No?
I mean, I'm not unhappy to be compared to Brandon Sanderson. If I could tell stories as good as he did, I would be thrilled.
I'm reading the Stormlight Archive right now.
Yeah. It's on my bookshelf behind me.
I would hope that or I'd like to be compared to someone like Stephen Bruce or Joel Rosenberg. I think they really they do a really great job of defining characters and making them at the same time fallible and heroic, and thus really eminently relatable. It would be a dream to be compared to some of my literary heroes. I tend to really my literary history really goes back to a lot of the pulp writers like Howard and Lieber. If I could write half as smooth as Fritz Lieber, I would be super happy. But as my first book, like I really, no one has compared me to anyone yet. But those would be my, the ones that I would love to hear associated with my name.
Okay, anyone else? We got it. We covered everyone. Okay. Now, what was your favorite part of writing? Like, what scene just kind of blew up for you, or it ran off on its own and you go back and you love it from the book? Because trust me, readers want to know those scenes, and they will literally go into a bookstore and look for those scenes. So is there any scenes that kind of stand out in your book? Madison?
So this is a little bit of a spoiler. I'm just gonna go with it. It's my favorite scene of the first book. It's where Liz is out hiking. She's exploring her family's land behind the cabin that she inherited. And she's sitting at a creek, and there is a mountain lion comes out of the forest and is watching her, and it's just staring her down. She freezes in place, and this whole thing blows up because Cam, which is her love interest, he's the second main character. The mountain lion tries to attack her. She's recently found out she's got a half sister that she didn't know about that's like got it out for her. And it all happens so fast. The attack happens. He knocks the mountain lion off of her because he turns into a mountain lion. And then something happens and magic takes hold and changes her. And she like freaks out. And it's just hilarious because like the banter back and forth, she's freaking out. She's stuck in this new body. And she's like, how do I change back? I can't change back. And it's super funny. They're trying to calm her down. And she's like, I can't do it. Basically in different words, but it just that main scene, and there's a couple other really good scenes in the book too, but that one stands out the most to me because it's funny, humorous. It's also got a lot of action in it, and there's a lot of fierce like back and forth against the mountain lion, who is actually somebody she knows trying to kill her. So yeah,
James?
big spoiler.
Yeah. So Emerald's Strength, which is the fourth book from Diamond Stained, there is a scene where one of my characters is basically under mind control, and he's been sent to the palace to kill the king and his lover. And so it turns into a big fight where he is both trying and not trying to kill his lover. She's trying to save his life and try to break him out of it and not get killed in the process. She's also trying to protect him, stop him from killing the king. There's people dying left and right. There's characters that you should be on the same side or in mortal peril from each other. It's a crazy scene, and I'm really proud of sort of the emotional beats of it and the conflict and how the characters are reacting under stress. And
Nice. Okay, Fran?
Well, so when I first started writing, I wrote both books as like one single book. So like the finale of that one, because I had spent that whole 8 months just focusing on that one scene, that was definitely kind of my primary scene that had me set. I would say from the first book, it revolves around the son of a chieftain who lives in a land where the gods are all dead. And they're basically descended from a priest who basically sat by the side of the last god before he gave himself to oblivion. And they were kind of scarred by what that god did. The tribe kind of seeks a purpose of seeking the greatness lost, but they have kind of lost their heritage. And there's a point midway through the book where the old man from the tribe decides to tell a story. And he's very good at telling stories around the campfire with the powders that he adds to the flames, changing the colors and adding different sounds and explosion as the whole camp goes. And he basically tells the whole entire history of the tribe, of the gods that basically led to the tribe. And that whole entire scene is just really powerful as it kind of builds a history, but it builds kind of the emotion behind who they became and what they're going to have to do.
Great. It sounds amazing. S.L. Herbie? Do you have what nickname can I call you?
Sean is fine. Sean is fine.
Sean.
Hello. My favorite scene, I mean, Shadows of a Dream, you know, it's packed with, you know, battle scenes and action, but I think my favorite scene is more of a quiet scene where the main character Stephen has gone through a lot of things in the other world. It's the other world's called Tyr, and he starts to accept himself for the person that he's become, as opposed to the person that he had been, carrying all those insecurities with him. And it's a fairly short scene with a friend of his in the hospital, and just the sort of the confidence and the casual way in which he deals with unexpected circumstances, I think just really contrasts really nicely with the character of Stephen as the book begins, who is just a ball of insecurity and always sort of playing it safe and not wanting to upset anybody or cause a problem. And it really sort of brings his evolution, I don't want to say to a close, but to a good point where a reader who may not particularly respect him at the beginning really starts to develop some respect for him as he sort of comes into his own. I mean, it's a lot of scenes to choose from, but I think that was the one that every time I read it, it just sort of resonates with me.
So it gives you chills.
It does. It really, and it to me, it sort of feels like you're putting on a warm sweater, right? Like just to see him sort of settle into the role that he feels that he should have been in all along.
Now, who are your followers? Like, who would your readers? I know that you all released a first book. Now, who do you like, age group? Where do you think that your audience lies?
Mine are adults. Yeah.
Like
Adults
over the age of 18.
Like 18.
I guess that's the question.
I mean, I would have been reading this in high
You
school.
have any parents that might consider, oh, well, that sounds, it's science fiction, or it's this or that. Maybe, my 11-year-old would like to read it. I just want to make sure.
Definitely not.
I mean, so I want to ask.
Yeah, they should be like high school for my stuff at least.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe like 16 is probably the lowest age I would let read my book, just because some of the scenes and the language, and I mean, it's not super over the top like sexual scenes, but it mentions like sexual acts and whatnot, and some parents I know were not gonna approve of that. So
Gotcha.
Then again, I was reading like Piers Anthony in like the 7th grade. So
Yeah, I mean,
those are good books.
I snuck those books too.
they were in my junior high's library at our school. I don't think the librarian knew how much graphic sex were in those books.
Probably not.
I mean, I think a lot of young men kind of gravitated towards the National Geographic book. That's my crazy man. And his name is Puddin'. Can you imagine? Bad boys. So how long, let me ask you this. How long do you think in writing, what words, like, do you have certain words that just were kind of predominant, that kept appearing, that you just, God, I use a lot of commas. I use a lot of semicolons.
I am the king of semicolons. Like, I use them and use them more than I should. That and ellipses. Like,
Yeah.
those are
I
my,
love
you know,
that.
if I was a king, my subjects would be the semicolons and the ellipses.
Yep.
I love my ellipses.
So do I.
I use them in dialogue a lot, so
I use them in dialogue a tremendous amount, like for a pause.
I feel like,
You know,
yeah, people don't.
To try to write how people talk, because people don't
Yeah.
talk in a string. They normally pause and reassess the conversation or think to find the proper word.
You're talking about what you use. I have an aversion to M dashes.
I love them dashes
Aw.
too.
I'm very rhythmic in my writing. I think the person that said I sound like Robin Hobb stated that I write very wave-like prose. I find M dashes are very jolting and break up a rhythm of a paragraph. So those are, yeah, I was trying to read somebody's book a few months ago, and it was every paragraph had like 2 to 3 M dashes, and it was so jolting and jarring. I had to put it down. I couldn't do it.
I feel the same. So I just use ellipses.
That's an excessive amount of M dashes.
They're gently. They're more gentle. Ellipses are more gentle.
Sneak them in.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's, it's the
Now,
ellipses.
Does anyone have any, do you find dialogue to be pretty easy to write on your
Yeah.
end? Or
I
with
love dialogue.
Yeah.
I love dialogue.
Dialogue
Love
is fun to
dialogue.
For the
write,
most part, yeah.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's times I'm running out of the shower to go and write down the dialogue I
Yes.
thought about while I was sitting in the shower because I know I've got to get it down for it.
I did that the other night. My husband looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, I gotta write this down before I forget it.
Trust me.
My
it's
characters
your thing.
talk a lot.
Definitely.
Like, it's like a Kevin Smith movie, right? Like, my characters talk a lot.
Yeah, no, it definitely, it happens a lot. Every author that not only I've interviewed, but authors that I have as friends and so forth, they tell me the same thing. Dialogue is something that you either love or you hate. And I think dialogue is, and actually, so that's probably one of the biggest, seems to be the biggest interest that I get is, how do you write dialogue?
Mhm.
Now, do you guys, do you find that you have any tips to give them, the listeners?
Read it aloud. Actually hold
Yeah.
it. Like don't just read it silently. You gotta read it aloud and hear the voice and add the emotion into it as you read it back and forth. Like I fight with my characters back and forth. If they're arguing, yeah, when I'm reading those, I'm fighting back because there's certain pauses, there's certain breaks in the words, there's certain ways, and there's times where you write it and it looks correct, but somebody angry is not going to say it that way, so it loses some of the feel to it if you don't actually read it, feel it, and so that's my biggest thing is read it aloud.
Yeah.
That-
And
and
even
then
if
wait
it
for them
makes
to
you
talk in your head.
laugh out loud, like, if you're working on
Es-
dialogue, like,
Especially if it
it's
makes
funny.
you laugh out loud.
Yes.
I would say, and it sounds creepy, but listen to people. Like I listen, like I watch people and I listen to people because, if like I could write dialogue like myself all day long, but then, you can't really tell which characters are speaking and all your characters sound alike.
Mhm.
So I listen to people. I listen to how they talk, listen to word choices they make. And it does help me write my dialogue, so, be an observer.
Now, where do any of you have like certain prerequisites before you write? Like, do you have to have your favorite chair? Do you have to have a certain little nook? Or like, I am someone, I will walk through the woods. That's my big thing. Or
I
out
used to
on my
write.
balcony, you'll see me flailing arms and you're like, oh, she's writing.
I can write anywhere as long as I have like headphones. And even without headphones, I can probably write if
Now,
it's not too emotional stuff.
do you listen to music as you write?
Yes.
I do too. Music
What
is super
band?
important.
Sometimes
I
I do,
can't.
sometimes I don't. So
It's just I don't know, to keep the world at bay. Like I'm not listening to it. I don't hear it consciously. It kind of just fades, but it keeps like other more distracting background noises away or whatever.
And what type of band?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What type of music? I'm sorry.
Instrumental mostly. I don't want the singing to distract me, so it'll be like instrumental, like soundtracks or video game music, or I have like 8,000 MP3s on my computer. So I've been collecting music for years.
I'm the opposite. Like I have a specific playlist for every work that I'm working on with specific songs that I use it to block things out, but mostly because I'll find a song that elicits in me a feeling or the theme of a given scene.
Mm-hmm.
And because, I work long hours and sometimes I don't get the chance to write that I like to, having that will enable me to get right back into that feeling of that scene or where I was, so I can, continue along that. So, music is super, super important. As a child of the 80s, though, I listened to things like Asia and Bon Jovi. I'm a Jersey boy, so like you got to have some Jovi in there.
Oh,
Yeah. My co-author on some satirical fantasy novels I was writing, he asked me once, like, so what music do you like? What music do you want to have like on the official playlist for this? I'm like, nothing. I don't know. I didn't listen to anything specific. And he's like, whereas he's like, music is very like specific songs are very important for him. Whereas for me, it's like it could just be anything that's not distracting.
See, and I don't listen to music, but my husband, when he's on it off, he'll be cleaning the house and be blaring music, so I have to shut the office door. But somehow he knows how to find the perfect song to drill into my brain and prevent me from writing, and I will just sit there at the keyboard trying to think through it, and I can't. Like, I don't like a lot of background noise. I can handle some. Now, there's two different phases. Like when I'm writing, I usually like it quiet. I have my window open, I can see outside. I like the sounds of nature and stuff like that. But this is my office. This is my portal room where I kind of go and transport into my worlds. But I kind of like it peaceful. But then if I'm brainstorming or if I'm going through and designing plots and doing notes, I go out in front of the TV and I turn on like Lord of the Rings marathon or Harry Potter marathon and just let it play in the background. And those fantasy sounds will stimulate me and get me really going and doing notes. Only time I have ever written to anything music, one of my partners when I was much younger got murdered, and I went through a really dark time, and I put on Yanni, Heart of Darkness, but it was just and I wrote probably the most creepy, twisted story I've ever written, just headphones on, doing nothing. But now that story got put away, and I haven't but I mean, that was the only time I've ever written anything listening to music, but that was a powerful thing where I realized how music can be powerful for it, but I don't use it often.
Okay.
I play like pop music kind of in the background on occasion. Not super loud. I only blare it when I'm cleaning.
That's the husband cleaning song.
Yes,
She's the one dancing around the house.
I am. That's the best way to clean, But I keep them kind of on the lower like sound, almost like it's just barely there. You can barely hear it, kind of like background noise. I absolutely cannot write with the TV on though. It's like I have to go sit in my corner and let my son watch like Little Baby Bum or something and just be over there in my corner writing on my laptop. So
Yeah, mine is classical. Like I love Berlioz and Chopin, and I mean I write poetry as well, actually. Now, do any of you write poetry or
Only
short
Poorly.
when I'm-
stories?
I've tried.
Only when I'm dealing with something emotional, and then I do. So it has to be very. I can't just write poetry.
Poorly. I write poetry poorly. That's,
Yeah.
that's the
Me
best
too,
way to
me too.
the best way to express it.
7th grade, I thought I was the next Edgar Allan Poe, thanks to my American teacher. And I wrote every single like dark murder, gothic kind of poetry that I could come up with, and it was all terrible. I At one point in time we did Beowulf, and we had to do like a long form, and I like wrote this whole like 100-page poem of the story. And
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
7th grade was my closest to poetry, but I will never do that again.
Now, did any of you study like writing or take any kind of classes when it came to
No.
writing?
Closest
Right.
I came was like expository writing when I was trying to get my education degree, but it really doesn't translate to fiction. So,
I just read a lot, and apparently absorbed a lot of what I read, and on how they did stuff. I guess I didn't take any formal training other than like high school English, which wasn't about writing. But
I had too much of a bad experience. I had a creative writing teacher who he was one of the people that believes fantasy is subpar literature. It's not and one of the people that basically says it's not literature, it's garbage. And here I am dreaming of being a fantasy author, and everything I write keep tear apart. And then also I was dealing with the whole coming out stage. So some of my books like had some of that in it, and he tore those apart. Like I would get my stories back just covered in red marks, not a single thing for grammar or anything. Just nobody would want to read this topic, but I'm just completely going off about it. So
Oh my goodness.
yeah, no, I have considered looking him up and dropping a book, but
That's what you need to do. Look them up and say, here, take it for free. Just
For
one.
real.
No, I can do this.
dedicate your next book to him.
he wrote like just essays on like he added pages to my stories at points, just going off about Tolkien and how Tolkien destroyed literature and
Oh my gosh.
a sign of a diminished mind who cannot exist within reality and cannot cope with the real world. And I'm just like, dude, I'm a sophomore. What is up?
Oh my goodness.
Jeez.
That sounded personal.
Oh.
That was not nice.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
so how badly did his writing career tank?
I don't know. He got the teacher award or whatever because he had a picture where he met Paula Abdul back in like the 80s or whatever. But obviously, it wasn't students like me who were voting for him because that was one of my worst teachers. The only other teacher I had was also American literature, but that was a person who said literature was only to be read as the author intended it, and there is no other interpretation that you can take from it. So it wasn't in your yellow book that it wasn't.
I detest people who
I
tell
don't
me
get
how to
that.
read.
Yeah.
Right? Like tell me what I should get out of something.
And that's why I
Please,
would
please, because like I can't figure it out myself.
I think
Yeah.
like authorial intent is important, but obviously you take your own like truth and your own way of interpreting things from it. Like death of the author and authorial intent are both true. In my
Mrs.
opinion.
Hall is the reason I hate The Great Gatsby, and I don't care. The car is yellow because of the reason I said, not because of why she said.
Oh man. I had English teachers encourage me to write back in the day in high school and stuff. I didn't take anything in college or any creative courses. I was pursuing a degree in kinesiology, which is sports medicine. So there was like, they taught me how to write like a research paper, but there's nothing to writing a book. But I also read a lot and just always still have my head stuck in a book all the time. So it just kind of filtered through.
I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons
Me too.
Yeah.
and continue to role play to this day. So I think that probably more than anything else influenced, my writing. because you really have to be creative to, to do it right. I would never tell someone how to do it right, but you got to be creative.
To be a dungeon master,
Yeah.
definitely, when your
absolutely.
players throw out your story because they chose the option you didn't think of.
Everybody made me
Yeah.
the DM, but I loved it. They didn't realize.
I love it.
I like to be the
It's
DM.
great.
I like
It's
to
great.
carry you through a story and try to kill you.
But I don't know how players always can pick the choice that you didn't think of as the obvious one.
Well, then they just get retribution.
So is anyone emotional? Do you get emotional when you write certain parts or certain characters?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. If
Heavy
you're
scenes.
not, I think you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Heavy scenes. Yeah, like I have to go like walk it off.
When I first finished my first book, I definitely cried. There's a few scenes that I can pinpoint. Like I became like an archangel out of one of Byrne's stories. And the beginning of that line, just every time I read it, it gets me teary-eyed. There's certain parts that are specific, like will get me every time. Even like editing, I'll have to kind of stop and.
But that's one of the things. If you don't feel the emotion, how can you expect your readers to feel it? And I've had authors in the past that where we've had this conversation, and it's kind of 50-50. There's ones that want that emotive feeling, and then there's others that are, well, it's just a book, so read the story and that's the way the story should be. And I
As a
can't
reader,
get that thinking,
as a reader, like I don't want to read a book that doesn't make me feel something.
No, I
Right?
want to feel
Like,
something.
agreed.
Yeah.
Whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's
As long as it's
whether
not
it's
boredom.
love,
And it might be
you got to feel something, right?
one part, like something that would make Madison cry would never make me cry. And there's things that I would probably read or take into account in a different way than Brand would. I mean, it's just, you can't really tell people what emotion to feel. You have to know that you feel something,
But
and I think the deeper that you feel it, wow, I got something here. This is good. Now, I have to tell all of you, I have had a beautiful time, and I would like all of you, I'm going to go down the line, and please tell us where we can find your book. Readers want to know, where can they find your book? What social media? What are we using here? Websites? What we're at? James?
I just had a book come out yesterday. It's the Jewels of Illumination box set, books 1 through 3. You can get that on Amazon, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can borrow it through that. You can find me on Twitter at JMDReid. That's REID. And you can find me at my website, which is http://jmd-read.com. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Fantastic Worlds of the Imagination, where we have a lot of fun posting like silly pictures and memes and complaining about Mondays. So.
Madison?
So you can find all of my work on Amazon. Most of my books are currently on Kindle Unlimited. My website has a link to all my social media. It's www.thechaptergoddess.com. And I am on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok. I think that's all of them. I'm kind of spread out. Like I tried to get on everything I can, so you guys can like reach out to me and talk to me and just whatever. I also have a Facebook group that you are more than welcome to join, and it's also, there's a link on my website to that as well.
Great. Grant?
You can find all of my work on Amazon. Most of it is on Kindle Unlimited. You can find me on Facebook, Brand J. Alexander. You can find me on Twitter, Brand J. Alexander. I do have a website, brandjalexander.wixsite.com. wixsite.com. Yeah, I'm a little bit everywhere.
Wonderful.
Um,
Al,
all of my one book
give you a nickname, I promise.
can be found on Amazon. It's available on Kindle Unlimited and in Kindle and paperback. My website is www.readslharvey.com. My Twitter handle is @readslharvey.com. My website has fiction. I did four prequel stories before the book, which is available out there. I did a couple author interviews, one with Stephen Bruce, who is my personal literary hero.
Mhm.
Some book reviews and just, fun stuff. I'm on Facebook, SL Harvey. So,
Okay.
reach out. I'd love to talk to you.
That's awesome. Guys, I want to thank you so much. I've had a wonderful time.
That was great.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you
Yes,
so
it
much.
was awesome.
And for the readers and watchers, we thank you. And everyone have a beautiful night.
You too.
You
You too.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.